I'm trying to hide from a deer's vision, so camo is really important, right? And pattern, and I mean, for decades, like I remember growing up in the 90s when it was all like the cutting edge, you know, the biggest prep to deer season is like, what new camo pattern is out, and look at how detailed it is. But now we know that it's actually not really that important in terms of like, you know, is it a maple leaf or an oak leaf? A deer does not care. And that actually might hurt some of that like distinctive. So what can we do in terms of like pattern camouflage to maximize our efficiency against a deer's eye?
Right. And so this is where it gets into, we thought we were moving forward in the 90s, as you mentioned, where we actually moved backward, because turns out, and a lot of people argue this, well, like, oh, so-and-so was able to shoot deer in their plaid, right? The old plaid coats.
The old plaid coat.
It's because that breaks up your form, which is really all you need to do. The deer can't see, as we said, they see 300. They see a broad spectrum range, but they don't see in detail. They see kind of fuzzy compared to us. And so all you got to do is break up your form. And so all that detail really doesn't do anything. It's all about having a pattern that can break up your form. And I think now what we're seeing, and this is just recently, is a lot of camo patterns are just more open. They're more big and blotchy.
Like exactly.
Kind of like this pattern here, which is just a Cabela's, I think it's called Outfitter.
Generic contrast and some generic colors.
Yeah, the generic colors. So the old plaids actually did that fairly well. It didn't have to exactly match the exact environment, right? And so finding patterns that do that and are pretty open. And I think one thing you can do, this is kind of maybe a hack, you might call it, is if you look at a pattern and kind of squint your eyes so it's just like a little bit fuzzy to you, that might, you know, kind of give you an idea of how a deer might see that. And if it is blobbing up as one color, then it's probably not doing too much for you, right? And so I see a lot of these patterns out there, and I'm planning on doing an episode in the future where I break down some patterns and just give an honest opinion on them based on this. But if you see patterns that, when you do that, you don't see much distinction in color, to a deer, it probably looks like just one blob of color. It's probably not doing too much for you. You might as well wear just a brown coat and some brown pants or something. Because a lot of those older patterns, they do that, what they call blobbing up, and it just looks like a big color. If your pattern is just looking like the bark of a tree, I guess the question is how many times would a deer look at you and you're exactly against the back of a tree? Like if you're in a tree stand or something, you're probably not just lined up with the tree a lot of the time. You're lined up with part of the sky.
Yep.
And so that's another reason why if it's just that one barky looking color, it's probably not that good as far as breaking up your form. And honestly, this pattern here, and I have no affiliation with the Cabela's at all, but I love this pattern because, and we can get into some examples. So I hunt a lot of public land in Michigan, and I hunt some areas where it's hard to get in trees, like bedding areas that have a lot of undercover, but then just like trees that are kind of like telephone poles, you know. So you get up in one of those, like you're blending into the tree a little bit, but the sky a lot, right? And so I've been up in those trees with the high detail defined stuff, and deer will pick you off because you are this blob up in the tree. Where stuff like this is much more open, I've had much more success. They just don't pick you off. And so, yeah, just looking for camo patterns like that. Again, if you squint your eyes and you can't see any difference in contrast or anything, you might want to stay away from it.